I'd like to welcome everyone. Sorry, my name's Bill Lilly. I'm Chief Research Officer for RACE. I'm just filling in at the moment for John. John's having technical difficulties joining, and hopefully he'll join shortly. So today's partner webinar is a mixture of different topics, one which will include myself talking at the front. But I'll start the meeting. How do I change this?
Ori, please.
Ori, next slide, please. Just by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands throughout Australia and their connection to land, sea and community, and recognise their continuing and pay our respects to them and their cultures and their elders past, present and emerging. So, as I said, I'd like to welcome you all on behalf of John for joining us today at this partner meeting. I hope this is an excellent collaborative session where we're looking forward to feedback from our partners. I might begin just by introducing myself and the research plan and changes that we're making. Ori, if you wouldn't mind changing slides. So my name is Bill Lilly. For those of you who haven't met me, I think I've met many of you since arriving back in the country. I've been with RACE now for about 5 months, having been away from Australia for the last 11 years. But this area is not new to me. It's very much, RACE is built off a precursor of a study that I used to run at CSIRO. So I've come back to join a bunch of friends in the research community that I've worked with in the past, and new friends in our industry partners. Ori. So just to talk to, I guess, more broadly, part of the role of coming back and really looking at and understanding the research program that we have and doing a bit of a refresh and repositioning of the work. So that process is very much built around an innovation framework, really trying to understand, when we look at large-scale change, what are the drivers that need to occur across innovation in order to facilitate change. And so we've been looking at a lot of the work that's been done to date through what historically have been called our opportunity assessments, and also doing a number of external research pieces of work in deep dives, for instance, in the power sector, but using this sort of innovation framework in order to understand our work and to make sure that it's A, both relevant, and B, better positioned to look at sort of systemic innovation and systemic change. So bearing in mind that, of course, with the CRC, which has a bit of a unique role, which is really focused around bringing innovation from the research community into industry to really, drive our economy. So these are the sort of framing analysis, if you will, on the way that we've looked at this particular process. And to quote Stephen Wolfram, who obviously is clearly much smarter than I am, I can't learn stuff without a framework in which to put it. So this is the sort of approach that we're taking to looking at what we're doing today. Ori, if you wouldn't mind. So from a conceptual model, really thinking from a sort of conventional approach where we tend to be very technology focused, generally, from a systems point of view, generation specific, or at least generation focused, and often with a sort of silver bullet mindset around wanting to bring some magic technology in to solve all the world's problems. And we tend to find that this is a siloed and disjointed sort of design and delivery model. And very much, if any risk is put into the process, it's really from a project-specific point of view. Where we obviously want to go is to a much more integrated view, having levers of change in multiple levels, really looking at things from a portfolio perspective, and making sure that we're orientated towards opportunities for synergism. So really wanting to not repeat the work that we do, but looking very more around a collaborative model, seeing where RACE really makes a potential impact for change, but looking more broadly around how can we better collaborate with our partners to really drive a large-scale transformation process. Ori? So building on that, and I don't want to dwell on this particular process too much, but this is really just to put through the sort of process of that we're looking at to understand what our research framework should look like. And on the left are really sort of things that we've done to date, really focused around what we're called the opportunity assessments and research questions, reframing those, putting them within that broader context that I've talked about in terms of an innovation framework, and then looking at how we translate that into research projects, delivery of those projects, knowledge sharing in a sort of standard approach, but then wrapping within that a much more large-scale integrated systematic view of change, and also where those projects fit, how they drive within a broader context, and working with our partners, both research and non-research, on that. You'll see there's a blue dot at the top, and something that we'll focus about today, which is really saying that despite all of this, and despite putting a lot of thought behind what are the sorts of research projects that we do, being CRC focused, we always are industry front of mind. So we need to be able to be responsive to industry questions that come to us, but likewise, we also need to set an agenda such that industry begins to see a broader picture than they may see in their normal day-to-day practices. Next slide, Ori. So at a very high level, these are the race themes as they exist currently. And when I talk to these, this is still a work in process. We will be going to our board to talk through the changes that we've done, but I would like to highlight where we are today and where we've come from. So in the past, we had 4 themes, which were homes, business, networks, and what was called Race for Everyone. In our current structure, we're proposing homes, business, networks, a new theme around electric vehicles. Electric vehicles was always in the program, but it was a subset of work within networks, recognizing that that has become a very significant cross-sectoral issue, growing importance in both national and international context. We want to very much ramp up the work that we do there. And the development of a new program we're calling Race for Change, which is really much more around how do we drive and take a sort of broader view to system solutions, and how do we try and influence and impact change towards a net zero outcome for Australia and, quite frankly, for international purposes. And finally, I'll just step into the next stage, which sort of goes into one layer down on this, Sorry, if you don't mind, which is to really then talk to a non-exhaustive set of research topics by program and theme under there. And I think the key message to get out of this, there's a lot of text in there, is really to recognise that within those broader themes, there are a lot of different projects and processes that can lead to large-scale transformative outcomes. And we will be proactively looking across that space, but we'll obviously be reflecting very much what our partners reflect to us, and look to facilitate work that meets those broader objectives around carbon reduction and around reducing people's bills, but within a wider spectrum of work. And it's really there to provide a framing to say, you know, this is for us to come with you and facilitate these larger scale processes, and to really be focused on that change, but recognise that there are a multitude of different ways in order to tackle this problem. And for me, I think that's my final portion of work here. We will have questions and answers section at the end. I think people have been asked to add those to the chat, if I understand correctly. Aria, we might go to the next slide. Oh, sorry, not on the end of it. So just to Ben, yeah, that's to give you an idea on that. The last slide is to talk to the fact that we will continue and have a list of new proposed areas that we would like people to come and basically put full applications in for. We'll do these in a co-designed process. They will be building upon the OAs as initial guides to questions, but we're using that sort of innovation framework in order to make sure that there is a better balance around an understanding of a change process within those questions. Going through and reviewing those, we have found that in certain areas, there tends to be a bias towards one or more of those topics, but typically within our system, very much, say, a technical bias. Depending, of course, on the size and the scale of these projects. So a couple of the projects that we'll be talked to today are quite large projects, and in those project areas, we expect a much better balance across those set of questions. But for particular projects which might be much more targeted, for instance, we may expect them to do a subset of those. So it's not saying this is a sort of yes or no, you have to have all 5. It really is dependent on size and what we're trying to achieve, but in the broader context. So, building on that, obviously there will also be a temporal framing to that. Many of these processes are sort of building upon a sort of feasibility to transition to expansion model. And it depends basically on the problem we're looking at, but we're really trying to frame change around anything that comes to us moving within a readiness level. So it could be a commercial readiness or a technical readiness level of at least 2 steps whenever we do these programs. Laurie? So from there, I think this is a good time to move away from race talking at you and to really introduce Josh Byrne. I'll just double check now whether John is online. If he's not, then I'm happy to introduce Josh. Okay, so Josh is Dean of Sustainable Futures at Curtin and is leading what is one of our large new priority projects called the Pathways to Net Zero Precincts. And this is an opportunity for Josh to talk to the project that has been brought forward. This is a recent one since I've arrived back in the country and joined RACE, and for Josh to be able to talk to the project and to his experience.
Thanks, Bill. And hello, everyone. I'm joining you from Whadjuk Budja, or Whadjuk country over in Perth. And I'll just get onto the next slide, if that's okay. So firstly, I also want to just acknowledge my co-CI, Professor Peter Newman, who has worked very closely with me and indeed all of our research partners and industry partners on getting the project to this point. We're really excited to be launching it, really starting next month. We could kick off on the 1st of October, but we're at a point now where we're ready to go and super excited. And a big thanks to the whole team at RACE that have been instrumental at helping put the project together, getting to a point where we know it's going to be really successful. So it's a collaborative research partnership involving Curtin as the lead, but also UTS, Monash, UniSA and Griffith. The project's running in 2 tranches, and I'll talk more about that throughout the presentation, but essentially we have some case studies that will be kicking off on the 1st of October, and we're calling these Tranche 1, and then other case studies starting shortly after that, and they're called Tranche 2. So I'm going to focus on the overall project design and project architecture in this presentation, but also delve into our Tranche 1 case studies with a little bit more detail. So our industry partners include Development WA, who are the West Australian State Government Development Agency, Hesperia, who are a leading privately owned urban developer here in Western Australia and arguably at the forefront of sustainability aspiration. We have Sustainable Settlements, who are delivering the Witchcliff Eco Village in the Margaret River region. Cisco Centre for Networks, who are based here at Curtin. The Sustainable Built Environment National Research Centre, also based here at Curtin. Western Power, who are the state government-owned operator of our Southwest Interconnected System or electrical grid. And then, of course, Regional Growth New South Wales Development Corporation. Next slide, please. So we're taking a living lab methodology approach to this project. And essentially what we want to delve into is how do we achieve net zero emissions across a different range of precinct typologies. So precincts are an interesting sort of geographical unit, if you like. They're bigger than a small development, but smaller than a city. And they can be kind of anywhere in scale in between. And what we're really interested in is how these units of the urban fabric can be used in a way to rapidly decarbonise, because often the types of technologies and governance systems are more manageable than city scale. And as we ramp up and achieve net zero outcomes across multiple precincts, well, then of course that's what we see as one practical and pragmatic way to rapidly decarbonise cities and regions. So we've identified 3 typologies of precinct. We have residential precincts, mixed use, so that's both commercial and residential, and then light industrial or business park precincts. And we've been very selective in the case study precincts in that we have ones that are all aspiring towards achieving net zero. They have a range of proponents, both government and private sector, in some cases mixed ownership. and they also are at different stages of delivery. So some are in the planning phase, some are in construction, and others are in operation. So we have an opportunity within this 3-year project timeframe to delve into the learnings of these precincts at these different points along their development continuum. And really what we're looking to do here with the Living Lab methodology is embed our research into the operation of these projects, whether it be planning, delivery, or actually running. And we see really this innovation ecosystem of stakeholders involving industry, clearly, government, researchers in the academic field, but very importantly, citizens, and what is their role in understanding the transition towards net zero. And so by embedding our research team into these real life projects, we hope to share and learn from one another, and then very quickly feed this back out into industry and the wider community and government policy to see if we can accelerate the adoption and rapid scaling of net zero precincts nationally. Next slide, please. So the governance structure for a project like this that involves case studies across multiple states and multiple research partners is one that we're describing as a federated model. So with Curtin there as the project lead, we then have the other universities that I mentioned before responsible for their case study projects, their local partners, recognising that they understand their local partner needs and their backyards better than anyone. And it means that they can focus on the servicing of their project and their partner needs and local specifics, but also by working nationally in this partnership approach, we can ensure that we are pulling the best skills and knowledge and capabilities from the wider CRC research family. So this is really important. And then we will have an overarching project steering group and reference group when it comes to the national project deliverables that I'll touch on towards the end. But really, each of the university research partners will be working very closely with their case study partners. Next slide, please. So this shows you a bit of a breakdown of the project design in terms of workflow and work packages. So we have the project management led by Curtin. So all of the I guess, week-to-week, month-to-month race engagement and coordination, but also the WA team are focusing on our 7 local case studies. And then we have these work packages. So the first bit of work that we'll kick off on next month is a net zero precinct certification review. So this is a chance to really engage with organisations like Climate Active and the Green Building Council of Australia, who are doing lots of work in this net zero space, as well as some of the other organisations who are behind the sustainability certification schemes like Enviro Development and One Planet Living, who are very rapidly reviewing their frameworks and criteria around net zero. And the idea is to try and make sure we're on the same page with all of the other research partners with our projects to clearly communicate what we mean by net zero at the precinct scale, what measures do we use to ensure that we're really speaking the same language. So this will be quite an intensive bit of work to kick off with. We then have the different case study precincts that I'll go through in a bit more detail for tranche 1. And then this synthesis work, again, that I'll touch on with the upcoming slides. Next slide, please. So the precincts, very quickly, we have in stage, the tranche 1 rather, for residential, the Knutsford Urban Regeneration Precinct, which is being delivered by Development WA. And this will pick up learnings from early stages of this precinct that are already built and operating, including net zero aspirations, and then feed into the planning of the rest of the 25-hectare development. Then we have Rivermark, which is being delivered by Hesperia. It's a large brownfields inner city area development. Again, they are interested in not only net zero around operational energy, but also net zero for embedded energy too. And then we have the Witchcliff Eco Village, which is well under construction with a number of homes built and now people living in them. It's a 450-odd lot development down near Margaret River, which is truly a global best practice example of net zero. They have their microgrid for both energy and water, an integrated EV strategy. Now, we're lucky also to have the Strategic EV Integration Project, or SEVI, being headed up by Charlie from Curtin here and Scott from UTS, we will be collaborating with them on that component to bring the EV story into these net zero precincts. So we're looking at transport and movement as well. Next slide, please. The mixed use, we have the Alkimos Central City Centre, which is under planning at the moment. This will be delivered by Development WA. It's a major transit-orientated development with the new train station. The Kirtland Bentley campus and the UTS Ultimo campus. So this is building on earlier work done through the Greenwave project as one of the fast-track projects through RACE. And then Net Zero Corridors, which is building on the work that Peter Newman's done over many years through the Sustainable Built Environment National Research Centre, which is looking at how we can use trackless trams as stimulators for net zero urban development along corridors linking net zero precincts together. So again, it's bringing mobility into the net zero story, but really looking at how we can use these mid-tier transit corridors to stimulate the right kind of urban development. Next slide, please. Then finally, the light industrial and business park case studies. We have the Peel Business Park by Development WA, just south of Perth. The stage 1 microgrid is in, and Dev WA want that evaluated for lessons learnt to feed into stage 2, both technical and governance. The Roe Logistics Park by Hesperia. Again, they're at the point now where they're looking at needing net zero certification, so we'll be working with them on that. And then finally, the Parks Special Activation Precinct in New South Wales. Next slide, please. So with all these case studies, the idea is, as I mentioned, to really embed the research team within it, understand what the barriers and opportunities to move through those are, what's really critical to enable other proponents to achieve their net zero aspirations. And we've identified these 3 synthesis pathways, which is net zero precinct certification practices, DER and grid integration practices, and then, of course, net zero precinct governance practices. And so we will have a supervising professor and research fellow lead on each of these 3 themes, sitting at that national level, pulling the findings coming out of each of the local projects and case studies to really see what are the key common threads and the valuable information that can then be communicated more broadly to help scaling up nationally. Next and final slide, please. So our project deliverables. Firstly, of course, supporting our project partners in meeting their objectives. So underpinning each of these case studies, of course, there are detailed work plans which respond to the specific requirements and industry challenges for each of the proponents behind the case studies. And then we are focusing on what we're calling practice-orientated output. So we've planned 3 industry forums, 1 for each of those synthesis pathways, with corresponding technical notes and guidance coming out of those. And we're going to run 1 per year for the 3 years of the project. But there's also going to be a big focus on mass digital communications. And this is really about connecting with both our industry audience, but also the wider public to build momentum around this project. So there will be case study fact sheets and high production quality videos telling the learnings and findings of this project in near real time. And that'll all be hosted on a Net Zero Precincts knowledge sharing website, supported by a planned social media campaign to really try and build momentum around these research outputs. And then, of course, there'll be the necessary academic outputs, the journal articles, the PhDs, and the like. So I'll finish up there. And before throwing back to you, Bill or John, just flagging that the project team and indeed RACE are still open to new partners joining this really exciting project. One of the reasons that we designed the project architecture in these 2 tranches was to enable us to get started and to get underway, but then really ensure that there are pathways for other partners to get involved as the project develops. So if there's any queries, just contact Marianne Cantwell at RACE. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much, Josh. That's excellent. And I think an excellent introduction to one of our large priority projects that has come up recently. And I'd like to now introduce Paris Hadfield from Monash Sustainable Institute. She's a research fellow there. Monash is leading our energy upgrades for Australians' home large priority project. And Paris is going to present on that topic for us. Paris? over to you.
Thanks so much, Bill. It's great to be speaking finally about the upcoming launch of our project on energy upgrades for Australian homes. I've been helping to support our CIs and coordinate the proposal development for this project over the last year or so. Next slide, please. So the project has a really ambitious goal of accelerating energy upgrades of 1 million Australian homes by 2030. And I'll now mention a few of our key people on the next slide. So we have two chief investigators on this project, Professors Rob Raven and Liam Smith. They're both directors at Monash Sustainable Development Institute, and Liam also is the director of Behaviour Works Australia. Katie Vines is from Climate Kick Australia, who is leading the project coordination for us. And of course, Jenny Gregory at RACE is the program lead, I should say, for Race for Homes. Next slide. Our research partners include, of course, Monash, as well as CSIRO, RMIT, UNSW, University of South Australia, UTS, and QUT, Queensland University of Technology. And our industry partners include, of course, Climate Kick, as well as the Energy Efficiency Council, Knauf Insulation, the New South Wales Government, and the South Australian Government. Next slide, thanks. So as mentioned, this project has a broad vision to research, develop, test, and adapt a coordinated, practical, equitable, and community-focused platform to reduce energy bills and carbon emissions and significantly improve comfort and health outcomes for communities by facilitating the upgrading of 1 million existing Australian homes by 2030. And so this project makes an important contribution to the transition towards net zero emissions for Australian homes. Next slide, thanks. So what's the problem that we're seeking to address with our project? Well, there are complex barriers to energy upgrades for existing homes at scale. The evidence of effective delivery models and processes that engage communities and systematically connect home energy upgrade interventions is still insufficient. Moreover, housing quality, building type, climate zone, and access to supply chains vary widely across Australia. Socioeconomic conditions also affect households' capacities to engage and invest, and behaviour change depends on effective communication, cultural norms, everyday practices, and trust. In addition, top-down programs tend to treat households as customers first or only as customers, so other household needs and priorities are not met or recognised. So this paints a complex challenge for home and energy upgrades at scale that we're seeking to address. Next slide, please. The project is taking a place-based approach to innovation in delivery approaches for home energy upgrades, and this is to first draw on and tailor to diverse local circumstances, including housing quality, geography, climate, tenure, household income, policy and regulation, and supply chains. It's also about tapping into existing social networks and creating localized norms that build their own momentum, such as through community groups as key facilitating agents. And finally, it's about understanding community attitudes, needs, and aspirations as a precondition for effective engagement, collaboration, and activation for uptake. Next slide. So the key objectives for this project include researching the barriers and enabling conditions for large-scale and equitable home energy upgrades across climate zones and jurisdictions. It's about informing co-designing, evaluating, and learning from systematic pilot projects in different contexts across Australia. We're also looking to determine interventions and change pathways for upgrading 1 million and more homes across Australia. And finally, synthesizing outcomes from pilot programs into a practical and evidence-based prototype platform for enabling home energy upgrades. And this is looking to include tools, guidelines, and data for practitioners who are looking to implement upgrades in communities. And so we're looking to support practitioners to understand, engage, and empower households and communities to participate in programs, to gauge the quality of housing stock in their area, being able to identify supply chain issues and potential for both material as well as skills or workforce shortages, understand the policy environment, including policies that restrict and enable home energy upgrade delivery, and to ultimately learn from and benchmark against other home energy upgrade programs and avoid poor quality installations, and so on. And so working directly with state governments and peak bodies and private industry will allow this project to determine pathways and delivery models for implementation of the platform after the project end. Next slide, thanks. So this provides an overview of the structure of the project. So following a project inception phase, year one will really focus on establishing partnerships with pilot programs, understanding knowledge gaps and needs of pilot proponents, and systematically evaluating pilot approaches and intended outcomes. And this will inform a preliminary design of the prototype online home energy upgrades platform. In years 2 and 3, we'll continue and build on this work through pilot co-design, testing and evaluation, including development and testing of implementation tools, strategies and recommendations. And as I mentioned, in collaboration with industry partners, we'll look to consolidate the prototype online platform through the synthesis of outcomes, insights and resources, and look towards implementation after the project has ended. Thank you. So this slide gives a sense and an overview of how we're approaching the pilots and what we're looking from pilot partners. So our project offers funded research teams, advice and tools for design and implementation, as well as monitoring and evaluation, and the development and access to the prototype platform, and more broadly, a collective learning process through synthesis, communication, and dissemination of pilot outcomes, insights, and recommendations. And we're really looking for pilot proponents that will fund the project management, the hardware, recruitment and engagement, and deliver on the upgrades that we'll look to collaborate with and undertake research on. So the stage 1 pilots at this stage include Geelong Sustainability Home Electrification in Victoria, the Southern Highlands Net Zero Home Retrofit Program in New South Wales, and AP Wylands Energy Efficiency Retrofit Pilot in South Australia. Next slide, please. Finally, I wanted to talk a bit about the work packages that comprise this expansive and complex project. There are 7 work packages, including work package 7 focused on project coordination, as I mentioned, led by Climate Kick. The remaining work packages are kind of research and synthesis focused, and they'll each engage with the pilots. So part of the project governance and coordination will be about managing the work package streams and coordinating engagement across the pilot projects. So work package 1 is really around analysing policies, regulations, schemes and governance frameworks and options for reform at different levels of government, including financial regulation. And that is led by UNSW, Ben Milligan. Work package 2 is about identifying, testing and evaluating effective partnership, funding, delivery and engagement models for implementation in communities, including consideration of social equity. So that is led by myself and Rob Bravin at MSDI, as well as Ed Langham at UTS. Work Package 3 is around improving understanding of community readiness and household and community drivers for participating in home energy upgrade schemes through to installation, and identifying effective behaviour change interventions. And that's led by BehaviourX at MSDI working with UTS. Work Package 4 is about establishing an easy-to-use residential building stock model to assess retrofit cost and co-benefits. And that is led by CSIRO, Dong Chen, and working with QU team. Work Package 5 is about determining the strengths, weaknesses, and development opportunities for scaling up home energy upgrade product supply chains. And that one is led by Mohammed Abdul Rahman at RMIT with UniSA and QU team. And finally, Work Package 6 is about coordinating pilot research activities, synthesizing pilot outcomes, and developing the prototype online home energy upgrades platform to enable communities and facilitating agents across the upgrade journey. And that one is led by the co-CIs, Rob Bravin and Liam Smith at MSDI and Chris Reedy at UTS. I think I'll leave it there, but just a note, similarly to the previous project, we are open to additional industry partners, and of course we'll be recruiting additional pilot projects. So please get in touch with us or Race about that. Thanks so much, Bill.
Our pleasure. Thank you very much, Paris, for that wonderful talk. I'd like to introduce you now to Viv Mohan Ram, who's our General Manager of Research, works with me closely on a day-to-day basis. Viv's an absolute wonder, and she's going to talk to us about our attributions update. Over to you, Viv.
Thank you, Bill. Hello, Race partners. This is our first webinar for the year, so it's really good that you guys are able to join us. The first half of the year has been very busy. Thanks to Bill, he's been reviewing a research plan, and one of the other things that we had to look at is the current race attribution. So I just have a couple of slides to explain what has changed and what needs to be considered when putting forward your projects and when you're doing your budgets. So there's a confusion on the terms cash contribution and cash attribution. When we say cash contribution, it refers to the overall, to the high-level contribution of a partner to RAISE. So that's the commitment that each of our partners have signed when they joined RAISE. They will contribute a certain amount of cash or a certain amount of in-kind. Attribution is a proportion of that high-level cash contribution that is attributed to the projects. So previously, 70% is attributed to projects, but effective 1st of July, it would be 75%. And the remaining 25 covers RAISE's overall operational cost, including office rental, salary costs, and other expenses to run RAISE as an organization. So I would like to reiterate, this will take effect 1st of July. So contributions paid as of 1st of July, the attribution of 75% will take effect. Ori, next slide, please. Thank you. So in terms of the project funding, there is the funding breakdown, or the ratio is such that industry partners' attribution to the project is equivalent to 40% of the total project expenses. Our research partners attribute 20% to the total project expenses. The CRC will then match up to 40% of the industry contributions, and then that adds up to 100%. There is also a requirement that the in-kind contribution, the total in-kind contribution to the project must be equal to or greater than the total project funding. So those are the key requirements. In terms of budget expenses, we are very much, we are focusing strongly on knowledge sharing. And Josh has covered it very well in his Net Zero Precinct presentation. It is a key component of our research projects. It is a key component of our research outputs. Also, with multi-year projects, it is a requirement to have a project manager appointed to the project, because it's such a critical role in making sure that all the different work packages work together. And it's not the responsibility of the CI to focus on research and manage the project at the same time. So project management activities are critical requirements, and it is up to 20% of the total project funding. I think that's it. Those are the key things that I wanted to cover. I just want to remind you all, if you do have questions, can you please type them in chat, and we'll try and answer them when we can. That's it for me. Thanks, Bill.
Okay, so one of the wonders of the area we work in is it relies on technology, and of course we're having technology problems. So, but our ability to work with that is what's key. So we're going to now have a session on introducing our partners. This is one that John would have led, but John is having difficulty getting online. So I will just talk to our current partners and then introduce our new partners. So currently we have around 80 different partners across a number of tiers and within both the research and non-research areas. But today we'd like to focus on those that are coming on board. So we have a number of new partners starting with us. So we'll start with the top one, which is PowerTech, followed by Hesperia, New South Wales Government Regional Growth Development Corporation, NALF Insulation, the Aboriginal Affairs and Reclamation group from Government SA, Gaia Enviro Technologies, Development WA, Bioenergy Australia, the PPT Lab, and the City of Adelaide. And we're very much looking forward to working with every one of those new partners, and we're very happy and delighted to have them on board. Now, if I understand correctly, we're going to introduce these four of these new partners, being PowerTech, Gaia, RGDC, and NALF Insulation. So is Luke on?
Not sure if people can hear me, but
terrific.
I may be on.
Thank you very much.
Sounds like we've got the airways, so that's a good start.
Yes. Hi, Luke. Would you like to talk about Gaia and your joining race?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Bill. So yeah, Gaia Envirotech, we're a bioenergy and organic waste management company based in regional Victoria in Ballarat, and essentially we're focused on supporting sort of intensive agricultural sectors as well as food manufacturing industry in decarbonising their operations through adopting our technology systems, which primarily revolve around anaerobic digestion and other bioenergy technologies. So I suppose a typical project that we would look at is our technology. We've kind of designed in a way that's a more modular approach to traditional anaerobic digestion. So we often work one-on-one with potential clients or businesses around locating biodigester plants and our modular biodigester plant on their factory site, and actually treat their organic waste stream on their factory site that we can actually then utilise or pipe the gas back into their operations for use as either a natural gas replacement or electricity, depending on the needs. So that's typically how we would sort of formulate projects, and really excited to be a Race 2030 partner and look at opportunities for collaboration in some of those industries in bringing bioenergy to the fore as a key contributor to the race to 2030 and ultimately, contributing to net zero for many businesses. So that's a quick summary on Gyra.
Thanks very much, Luke. And we look forward to working with you. And I know Tracy in the business program is very excited to have you on board. Ari, can we just go back? Do we have enough on now? So just back to PowerTech and Anna Raghavan, CEO of PowerTech. Can you hear us, Anna?
Yes, I can. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Excellent. And we can see you. That's great. Thank you. Would you like to give a brief introduction to your company and your reasons for joining Race?
Yes. No, thank you very much. And thank you all for giving me the opportunity. So PowerTech Energy is based in South Australia, and we are a specialist energy and IoT tech company. We've been in this space for more than a decade, building IoT components, mainly towards integration of different assets. So our primary focus is to build a platform called the Smart Energy Management Systems. And what that's really about is connecting various assets to the orchestration of energy to different time of use tariffs in an intelligent fashion, and going with a very low cost solution to retrofit and get into the consumer space through value added services. So we work very closely with energy retailers and different service providers, and the idea is to build a platform and a dashboard to give them an orchestration of energy technologies. We also have a portfolio around energy, water, and waste, where, similar to the previous speaker, we have a solution in the food waste, where we're trying to break down food waste into soil or compostable type materials in 24 hours. And we have successfully demonstrated that, and we are commercializing that. So a little niche boutique company, but we need the help of the CRC partners to collaborate and help us build those capabilities up, keep it local, keep it South Australian, and really work with like-minded people.
Thanks very much. That's an excellent introduction. So Rebecca, are you online?
Yep. Can you hear me? Thumbs up.
Okay, great. I'd like to introduce Rebecca Hicks, the Manager for Sustainability and Circular Economy for Regional Growth Development Corporation of New South Wales Government.
Yep. Hi, everyone. So RGDC, we look after the special activation precincts, which are in regional New South Wales. And, what's special about these precincts is they're about, attracting jobs and investment of sort of future-focused industries in the regions. But part of the master planning is that these precincts have higher sustainability commitments. So in the master plan, we're committed to aligning with the UNIDO Eco-Industrial Park framework, which is about continuous improvement, and also becoming a circular economy hub and committed to net zero. So we, RGDC, are responsible for the delivery of the precincts and setting them up to operate as a precinct. So part of that is building the roads and infrastructure, but also, making that kind of functionality of bringing the businesses together, that sort of business support, and then the governance that helps it operate as a precinct well into the future. So what brought us to Race was our commitment to net zero and looking at how do we catalyse that in the precincts, what kind of governance arrangements do we need to have in place, how do we tailor those to the individual context of the precincts. They each have their own sort of profile and character, so it's not one size fits all, as well as the challenge of operating at a precinct scale. It's more complicated. There's a number of actors, and the interdependencies make things obviously more complicated, as well as actually navigating certification processes for precincts, which is a long-term plan. So step one for us, where the early maturity of the precincts is doing that catalyst piece, setting up and testing some of the governance to get businesses on board and moving towards that net zero in a structured and effective way.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. And we are very happy to have you on board with our precincts program. And I hope you very much enjoyed Josh's introduction. And finally, now for insulation. Steve, are you online?
Yep, I'm here if you can hear me.
Excellent. Yeah, do you want to give us a brief introduction of yourself and why you're joining Race?
Yeah, so my name's Steve Smith. I've been working for Canal Insulation for 12 years. previously in Northern Europe, based in the UK, but I moved over to Brisbane, our head office for the Asia Pacific region, 12 months ago now, as part of an initiative to share expertise from Europe and bring it to the Asia Pacific region. Two core reasons I think we saw the opportunity or a partnership for Race for 2030. The first one is obviously the first way to reduce energy of a home is to insulate, and we manufacture solutions for roofs, walls and floors. But what we've learned really in Europe is that if you don't insulate properly and if insulation isn't installed correctly, it doesn't deliver anywhere near what it should. In Europe, energy performance certificates were introduced in 2008, but since then, there's been lots of learnings that, you know, the performance gap may exist, that you may predict energy, but if you don't measure it, you don't know whether your home is performing as it should. So two key areas I think we're keen to share learnings, mainly from Europe, is one, through the use of new measurement technologies that are evolving in Europe and the way that other countries are developing those into policy. We saw Race as an opportunity, and the pilot approach that you're taking, the knowledge that we've picked up from Europe, we could share that, and that would be very useful. And two, installation processes that have been developed in other regions could be very useful for the Race framework to make sure that installation is installed correctly.
That's great. Thanks, Steve. And I think what I didn't talk to earlier is our desire to work obviously across our research spectrum within Australia, but also more broadly across the international realm to make sure that we're really getting the lessons that we can. So it's terrific to hear, you know, that you're bringing lessons from Europe across. And in the next section, I will introduce Alison to talk to our new staff members. Alison is our head of HR. Alison, if you're online.
Yes, I am. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name's Alison Brown and I'm the HR manager here at Race for 2030. I'm very proud to announce that we have two new starters that would like to introduce you today. Gemma Cook joined us on the 6th of June 2023 as a research program manager at Race for Change. Gemma is a full-time secondee from Curtin University. I will now ask Gemma to give you a brief overview of her background and previous experience. Over to you, Gemma.
Thanks, Alison, and hi, everyone. As Alison mentioned, I've started a couple of months ago at Race as the research program manager in the Race for Change program, which was previously known as Race for Everyone, and I'm based out of Curtin University. My academic background is from the University of Melbourne, where I studied a Bachelor of Arts, majoring in history, and then I went on to study a Master in Environment with a focus on climate change. My background's mainly been in local government, so I've previously held roles at the WA Local Government Association and the cities of Canning and Joondalup in Perth. As part of these roles, I've been involved in working with local government around climate adaptation and mitigation policy and projects, including establishing 2 regional climate alliances in WA, setting up a WA Sustainability and Climate Alliance across local governments to work on climate change projects collaboratively. Also worked on a couple of sustainability behaviour change programs and the development of a climate change plan at the City of Joondalup. As part of the Race for Change program, I'll be focusing on trust building with customers and understanding customer interests and needs, forecasting and foresighting, and developing the future energy workforce. And this research theme, as Bill mentioned, is also expanding into knowledge sharing and more of a behaviour change kind of focus flavour. And I'm really looking forward to working with the different partners. Some of you I might have already started working with, working with to reduce emissions and help with the renewable energy transition. Thanks, Alison.
Thanks, Gemma. Our other new hire is Beth Brunaro. Beth will be joining us here at Race for 2030 on the 4th of September, so this coming Monday, as Leader Innovation and Impact. I'll now ask Beth to provide a brief overview of her background and previous positions. Over to you, Beth.
Thanks, Alison, and Waldawani, everyone. As Alison said, my name is Beth Monroe and I look forward to joining RACE for 2030 next Monday as Leader, Innovation and Impact. I'm lucky to join you today from the beautiful land and sea country of the Walbunga mob of the Yuin Nation on the beautiful south coast of New South Wales. And I'd like to thank Elder Arnie Trish for encouraging the traditional Yuin language of greeting as well as partnering for all. So Walawani again. I myself a proud Badamaya Yamaji woman, and my ancestors are traditional custodians of some beautiful country in WA. And I too would like to acknowledge the elders of the many lands that we are collectively joining from today and pay my respects. So I've been asked to give you a bit of a potted history of my professional background. So here goes. And I may have worked with some of you during that time. I do recall working with Professor Peter Newman many years ago on travel demand management. So nice to hear of you again, Professor Newman. I have spent the bulk of my career in the Commonwealth Public Service, over 20 years in fact, and most of this time at the senior executive level. I have been privileged to be on long service leave since February, but immediately preceding this break, I was the head of division for the electricity division in the Department of Climate Change, Energy, the Environment and Water. So in this role, I directly oversaw the development and negotiation of the National Energy Transformation Partnership agreed in 2022. I was the Commonwealth representative on the senior officials group that directly supports energy ministers of state and territory governments, of which ALGA is now participating in energy ministers meetings. So under that partnership, there are a number of initiatives that have been agreed from the start, including the inclusion of an emissions objective and national electricity objectives or energy objectives. So it does cover gas as well, and funding for the co-design of a First Nations clean energy strategy. And the whole idea of the partnership is it's meant to provide an ongoing and enduring framework to support the energy transition to net zero for Australia. And it's the intention for the partnership will underpin the energy sector plan and the recently announced Australian Net Zero plan that the Commonwealth will be working with other governments on. In that role, I was responsible for a range of policy and programs in that with respect to national retail and network law, renewable energy, microgrids, batteries and demand management, transmission issues, including rewiring the nation, as well as a range of other matters such as oversight of Snowy Hydro Limited on behalf of shareholder ministers, amongst other things. So prior to this role, I held other division head roles in various departments, including the Strategic Policy Division in the former Department of Industry, Innovation, Science and Resources, Adaptation and Resilience in the Department of Agriculture, Water and the Environment, and the Knowledge and Technology Division in the Department of Environment and Energy. So I'm sure your head's spinning with the various names of departments that have changed for the Commonwealth over the last, let alone 2 years, let alone 10. So with respect to climate change specifically, I've held senior positions in most area of policy and program management, including adaptation, mitigation and international, and including being a senior member of our delegation to the Paris Climate Conference in 2015. So during my career, all of my roles have required really excellent engagement and connection with our science and research community. And I would say it's something that public servants find very hard to stay on top of. And so I'm really looking forward to being able to enhance that connection myself. Also in many of my roles, I've had direct oversight of programs like the National Environmental Science Program, the Australian Climate Change Science Program, and Australia's Emissions Projections and Inventory. So I met Bill on secondment in CSIRO for a year in 2008 and 9, and prior to joining government, I actually worked for an energy retailer for a couple of years doing contract negotiations. So anyway, that's a flyby summary. I have qualifications in business and economics and a master in environmental management. And I'm really excited about this new challenge and coming at this from a different angle. I'm really looking forward to working with all of you and Wollowani Hall. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Beth. Over to you, Bill. Thank you.
And that's thank you very much for both Gemma and Beth. And I guess that gives you a good feel for certainly for me coming in and thinking broader around what we're calling now the Race for Change program, and how we see a role for Race in really facilitating large scale transformation and really making sure that we have, you know, the staff to facilitate that, to work with our industry and research partners, and to really hopefully just make a, you know, fundamental change to the Australian economy. I'd like to open up to questions. We've got the chat Q&A for anyone who wants to write a question, but I'm very happy for people to put their hand up and ask any questions that they've got. I'd also encourage you to, you know, for those who like to reflect on things, to write to us at any time, if any questions, and quite frankly, at any time, and not just prompted by a webinar, but you know, we're here, we're open for business, and we want to hear from you, for both our research and our non-research partners. So if there's anyone that would like to jump on board, put their hand up first. It's always difficult for the, you know, someone needs to start it. If we don't, then we'll end up having a bit of an early break. So, are there any questions that come to mind? Yes, hi Mike. Yeah, the new EOI process is already up. We're making changes to the full application form currently, but that should be done next week, and that'll be the last of those particular processes. What we've really added to those is a better understanding of the innovation that's being brought forward. So we don't want to see duplication in research. We really want to see value add across the spectrum of our work. So understanding better what the innovation that's coming across, and being more specific around what the industry need. They're the two major changes within the EOI context, and those will be reflected similarly into the full application process. And there will be some simplification of some aspects that were in there to make it more relevant to the process of being able to be evaluated, both by myself and by John and by our board, and by our research advisory committee. For anyone who's interested in the Energy Upgrades project, you should basically contact Jenny Gregory, the program leader for Homes, and Jenny will facilitate any dialogue, either directly with herself to answer it, or with Rob, Liam and Paris and the team. Hi, Rod. Yeah, so Rod, in answer to your question, and I haven't provided it here, mostly because it's got to go to the board, all the forward projects, not just ones that we will sort of prescribe, but also ones that will come to us, are mapped against that innovation framework that I talked to earlier. And it's really there to make sure that from a systems point of view, we try and drive the maximum amount of change. But as I said, it is very dependent on the size and the scale of the project as well. So that's but that sort of overarching narrative, if you will, and understanding is what's going to be brought forward to make sure the projects are mapped against those. And we've mapped in the opportunity assessment questions within that, and where there are areas where there is a degree of imbalance, we are basically looking to redress some of those through some of the research questions with our research partners, and also through ourselves and our own internal expertise. Yes, there will be a program leader and manager for the new EV program. This again is there is a potential candidate for that. We just need to go through the process with the board and discuss that with them, and that will be done early next week. Viv, if you're open, Viv will answer the question on contributions.
So just a question on whether every partner need to contribute cash. We do have different tiers. Tier 4, which is the affiliate tier, it's mainly in-kind contribution. With the tier 3 supporting partner, we do require cash and in-kind contribution. So I hope that answers your question.
Okay. Let's give it one minute to see whether or not there's any extra questions. If not, as I said, feel free to reach out at any time to any of our staff, particularly the program leaders or myself, in terms of the research, but also our partner team in terms of our, dealing with our partners, and Marianne for looking for new business opportunities. David, you've come in with one. No, I guess is the answer, David. So any of the attribution changes will be for future. Don't see any more questions coming in. That's it. Okay, I don't want to hold you all up. I thank you very much for taking the time to join us here. I hope that it's been an informative session. Very much look forward to talking to all of you. And I'd like to just thank everyone that participated today, particularly our presenters on our two large new priority projects. Thank you very much for that, taking the time and really showcasing these large transformation processes that we're just really happy to see up and going. So thank you very much for that, and I'll take time here to just end it. Thank you.